This is Creepy and Geeky, a part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcast Network. Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and on today's episode, we will be talking about the MCU Disney Plus show, Ms. Marvel, with Ashley Thomas. But first, it's time to talk to Donna. How are you, Donna?
I'm doing pretty good, Robert. How are you?
Good. I'm doing all right. It's been a week, but it hasn't been a bad week. So
Yeah, same. It's been a week. It's been a
yeah,
very busy week, but you're right, not a bad week.
yeah. All right. So I've got a few things today, and you said you have a few things. So why don't you go ahead and get us started out? What's your first thing
Okay,
today?
cool. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, I don't know, can we put it? I guess we can put it on the geeky side. They actually dropped the teaser trailer for Dune Prophecy,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
I did see
have
it.
you seen it?
I did see the trailer. Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Um, it looks mildly interesting, but I just have not been able to get into Dune. I watched the two movies, the Villeneuve movies, but
Right.
yeah, I don't know, it's not my jam. My son, he loves it, but
Yeah.
yeah, he's all
I
over Dune.
I'm a huge fan. I've been a fan since the '84 film, and
Yeah,
my uncles have read the books, and they kind of always kind of push me to read them. And I've read a couple of them, and I really do like that universe. But the teaser trailer, I think the show is going to be streaming on HBO Max for like
right.
6 episodes. I like the idea that they're giving us that backstory on the Harkonnen sisters, or
Yeah,
Harkonnen, however people say it. Um, and then we get to see all about the Benny Gesserit, which every time I hear that, we always go into Benny and the Jets in my house. I don't know why. We just default to saying Benny Gesserit, like Benny and the Jets. But it's a stupid thing. We do it all the time. But it does look interesting. I like that they're at least giving us a little bit of backstory of these women, and the role that they play in this whole prophecy in the Dune universe. So it looks like one that I'm gonna be a little torn on it because I want to see more of Paul and like now, but I
yeah,
know we have to have baby steps to get to where that prophecy is fulfilled. So it looks like it might be a pretty good show. I know you're not excited about it. I'll have to talk to your son Harrison about it.
yeah,
I have to start following him so I can talk to him about it. We can bully you into watching it.
right.
But uh, that was something that I was super hyped about when I saw it. Just
Yeah,
because I love how the women in that universe wield a lot of power.
right.
They control a lot of things behind the scenes, and it's amazing to me. But that was my first thing to kick off.
Yeah. No, and I'm not like I don't hate them. I think the problem is that I think that Villeneuve didn't lean into the weird enough for me
Hmm.
from what Harrison has told me about the storylines and stuff is he excised a lot and made it kind of just about the political side of things more than anything. And for me that kind of like strips out the more interesting aspects of it. And so it feels like this show and the Benny Gesserit stuff was the more interesting stuff, but it was just kind of it's there in the movies, but it felt
Hmm.
like it was just kind of under the surface. And so I kind of am mildly more interested in this series to kind of get the backstory and kind of do all that. So I may check it out. Um, but I'm not positive at the moment.
It's okay.
But like I said, it looks interesting enough that I might check it out. So
Yeah, I definitely will let you know how it goes. I will be
yeah,
telling you everything every week. Well, not everything. I don't want to spoil it, but I will go, Robert, you
right.
got to watch this. You can't believe what they did last week. I mean, your son's going to be doing that. Trust me.
Oh, I know. All right. Well, I for myself, I ended up going to two movies this week, both on Thursday night.
Only
Um,
two?
yeah, yeah. and I'm only going to one this upcoming week.
You're
But it's a
slacking.
big one. It's been busy-ish here, and it's just like I don't know. Like part of it is a couple of things. One is the theater's 45 minutes away. So, yeah, it's a lot of time,
Right.
gas cost and stuff. And so, that coupled with we only had I had already got my tickets for next week for a movie I'll talk about in a minute. But so we only with the AMC A list, you can only get three tickets per week or three tickets at a time. So if you do an advanced ticket, you're only able to use two other tickets, until you get to that next until you get to that one that you that future ticket.
Oh, okay.
So we only had the two movies, but it was fine. It was the two newest movies that came out, and they were If, the new John Krasinski written and directed movie starring Ryan Reynolds, about imaginary friends, and then The Strangers Chapter One. So,
Oh my
uh,
goodness. I need to know your thoughts on these.
both of them were good. I wouldn't say either one of them was necessarily super great. If was cute. It's very emotional at times. I definitely teared up quite a few times during it. And it's a cute movie. I don't think, like I said in my letterbox review, that it's a good movie, but I don't know that I'll ever watch it again. It's not that it's bad or anything like that. It's just I don't know. It was a good one-time watch for me. So some movies are like that, like Robert Eggers' The Northman. Like I like that movie. I thought it was fantastic. I'll probably never watch it again. I may watch it maybe one more time, but it's one of those movies that it's so intense and very like The Northman was, that, and it's a good story and everything like that, but it's just like I don't know. It's just I don't know. But If was just kind of that same way, where it's nothing like The Northman. Don't get me wrong. It's got lots of fun, it's got lots of heart, but it's just one of those movies that I don't know, for me personally, it just doesn't scream rewatch. I could be wrong. Maybe I'll come back to it again later and I'll like it even more. But it was good. It was fun.
It looks adorable, and there
Yeah,
are
it's very
so
adorable.
many celebrity cast
Oh
voices
yeah.
in this movie. It's like
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And there's some you can tell right off the bat because you can hear their voice, and there's others you're like, I kind of recognize that voice. And then you watch the credits and you're like, okay, yeah, it was that voice. And then some you're just like, what? There is a neat little uh funny thing in the credits that you have to watch. It's kind of a you kind of have to know, but it's kind of a Easter egg that calls back to um either Deadpool 2 or Fight Club in a way, or both. So you just
That's
have
a
to,
very interesting thing in a
yeah,
kids movie.
yeah, yeah. No, and that's the thing. It's just I think it's real. It's more of an in joke type thing. If you catch it and you understand what it's saying, then you'll get it, and you're just like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So
So from viewing this, do you feel like they're definitely going to be making a sequel or a show of this? Probably not.
no,
Okay.
no, I don't imagine so. Um, it's a good one off. I think that it exists well enough on its own that it doesn't need anything beyond this. Um, but it's very cute. Like I said, I teared up. I was definitely like, I looked over and my daughter's like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "Yes." So, she's like tried to hand me a tissue. I'm like, "I'm not that bad." But yeah,
Well,
but
I'm
yeah,
glad that it was good. I know now to prepare and bring handkerchiefs in case I
yes,
need to dab my eyes.
but yeah, no, it was a good one. And then The Strangers Chapter One. So it's a good movie. It's not bad. I don't feel like it's necessary. The movie itself is very similar in a lot of respects to the very first Strangers movie. So if you've seen the first Strangers movie, you kind of watch this one. I mean, obviously this one takes it in a few different like it's set up differently, but the overall gist of it is the same. Couple goes to a house in the middle of nowhere and they get attacked by the strangers. It's pretty much the whole setup. It's literally the exact same in that way.
Hmm.
Things happen differently, but the end result is literally almost the same. That being said, this one is a setup for the next two movies. This is a three-chapter trilogy. And he even said like, so I had actually read something just before I saw it too, and that somebody asked if this was a remake or a reimagining of the first one, and he said kind of because it does it's redone, it's set up for this new actress, the new main actress Madeline Page. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. She played
No, it's
Cher.
catch. Yeah.
Yeah, she played Cheryl on Riverdale,
Hmm.
and so she is the new lead, and so she continues into the next two movies. So that's not a spoiler because it's already been announced that she's going to be in the next two movies.
Right.
So, but that's where it differs. If you've watched the original movie, you know what happened in the original movie, and then if you watch this movie, it's not much different. So I mean, just know that going in. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to go watch it, but I know there's some people who are dissatisfied with it because it doesn't take any great narrative leaps. It doesn't change anything in the overall structure of it. Um, but it's definitely set up. There's at least one actor who's in this who you recognize for sure, but has no speaking part and feels like they are there to be in the next one or two movies. So
I mean, I've never really been a huge fan of The Strangers. I
same.
know I'll watch this. I know I'm going to watch this one whenever it
Yeah.
drops on DVD or Blu-ray, whatever. But it's never really done anything for me. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm glad to, see that they're trying to reinvent it a little bit and
Yeah.
add a little bit more to that universe. And maybe it'll grow on me. I don't think so, but
Yeah.
maybe it
Have you seen The Strangers Pray at Night?
yeah.
I like that one a lot more.
I
That one,
think that one was a little bit better.
yeah, that one is to me that one's the best one so far. And so it's kind of a I didn't really I only saw the first one just like a couple of months ago for the
Hmm.
first time. But I'd seen Pray at Night before that one because I'd heard Pray at Night was better. It was the better
Prey at
one.
Night kept me engaged and
Yeah,
interested. The first one
yeah,
did not.
yeah, exactly. And that's what unfortunately this new one is kind of the same. Like I said, it's not bad, but it's not super engaging, but it's setting up for the next two, and that's what I'm hoping is the next two will be even
That
more
they'll elevate it
interesting.
a little bit more. Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully.
But yeah, so that was what I had for that. What's your next thing?
Oh, so Vinegar Syndrome. Everybody loves
Hmm.
vinegar. You heard about it already.
No, no.
So they're actually going into making original productions,
Oh,
and they actually have a film that's going to be coming out called Eight Eyes, and this is going to be from the team that is behind Joe Bob Briggs' Last Drive-In,
okay.
the not the funeral home production company. So Shutter's picked up this film. The trailer is out, and it is very much a retro 70s grindhouse exploitation type of horror film. The
Hmm.
aesthetics in it are so pleasing in this trailer. I really, really hope it sticks the landing because
Yeah.
I'm creeped out by the trailer. It's creepy, it's gory, it's
What was it
very
called again?
unsettling. Eight Eyes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you get a chance, definitely look at that trailer.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Now Shutter doesn't have a release date of when they're going to be dropping it, but it's one that's going to be on my radar for a while just because I've watched the trailer a couple of times now. I get obsessed when movies come out, so I watch the trailers and I try to catch things. But it's got a mix of everything. It's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes. It's got They Call Me One Eye vibes.
Mm.
It's really gritty, and I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of really gross horror killings in this film. This couple goes on a trip to I think Yugoslavia, and some random guy just walks up and says, "Oh, I can show you the sights around here." And of course, we all know that's not going to go well.
Yeah.
It's just not going to go. If he's taking you to creepy places, it's not going to go well. So, if you get a chance, check out the trailer. Eight Eyes.
Yeah.
It is going to be outstanding. I hope it really does stick the landing because the trailer gets me hype, and then you watch the movie, and sometimes it's like, oh, it's not that great.
Yeah.
But I'm really hoping that this one is creepy and at least holds true
Yeah.
to what it looks like in the trailer. I absolutely am excited for it.
Yeah. That's my hope for what's it called? Long Legs also. That
Oh,
like
long! I cannot
that
wait.
yeah. I mean that looks so good and I'm just like I'm very hyped for it and everybody's kind of hyped for it and they've done a great job on the marketing. But it's like, God, I hope they stick the landing on
Right.
this like so bad. Because there was another trailer. I think there was a new trailer that dropped the night we were watching The Strangers. And so yeah, I was just like, I really hope they fucking stick the landing on this because it's
Well,
gonna be so difficult.
it's so wild too because Oz Perkins,
Yeah.
he's an odd director to begin with. So I did see the Black Coat's Daughter because I it was supposed to
Yes.
be set in South Carolina, and and so I kind of love the aesthetic in that movie. And then I didn't watch Gretel and Hansel. I didn't watch
I
that,
didn't see that
but
one either.
he's also directing a Stephen King movie called
I
The
just saw
Monkey.
that. I,
Yeah, and it's an adaptation of a short story. I think it was in Nightmare and Dreamscapes.
yeah.
But oh my God, that story is so creepy. So I'm really excited to see the
Yeah.
monkey come out. So yeah, if Long Legs hits the mark, then I'm gonna be completely stoked to
Yeah.
see everything he does from this point.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Yeah, very cool. All right. So my next thing is that as I mentioned, I've got one movie that I'm going to be watching this week, and that is Furiosa. So I am super hyped for this. In prep for this, I am rewatching all of the original Mad Max movies again, uh, which they're all available currently on Max.
That's so
Ironically,
funny that you said that because that's what we're doing right now.
that's funny. Yeah, I'm on. I'm about halfway through Thunderdome right now. So uh it's so bizarre too. Like every movie is just like it's so funny to watch these movies because they are all so wildly different from each other while also being
Very
weirdly
cohesive.
very very cohesive in a way. Thunderdome is the weird outlier for me. Like it's just it because it was made in 85, it feels the most 80s. Like I don't know, it's just so silly in so many ways.
I mean,
um they really ramped up the like I don't know, the heightened reality of it. So
I think one of the things I don't like about Thunderdome is that he does a lot of talking.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
want Max
it
to
is
talk at all.
it is weird like because he talks so much in this one.
And honestly, I told my kids this when we were rewatching the sequel, the second one. I said, when you get to Thunderdome, it really feels like if they made that now, if they remade that, they would stick Beyonce in the
Oh
Auntie
my
M role.
god.
That's
Yeah.
why that one takes me out of the whole thing because I know it's Tina fucking Turner. I can't
Yeah.
unsee that. She plays a great job. I mean, I don't, I love her, but it's too MTV'd at that point. You know what I
No,
mean?
and
I don't
that and
know.
it really does feel like that. That's a great description of Thunderdome is it's Mad Max via MTV.
Right.
It really is. It's
Like
like
watered down
everything.
Kool-Aid. It's like if you had Kool-Aid and you watered it down even
Well,
more.
and it is watered down too because it's the only one of the whole series that's PG-13. The rest are
Yes.
R-rated. So they've like
And
sanitized it. It's the only one that doesn't have like it's not like a constant chase. Like
nope,
like they ground him into one area. And it's the most bizarre thing.
it is.
Like and then they brought in all the like the weird feral kids like
The kids.
they were like okay, everybody loved the feral kid in Road Warrior, let's give them a whole tribe of feral kids. And
But
it's
see,
like
we
no no
didn't
no
even
no,
need
that
that.
was the wrong way. You went too far.
I would have rather them kept it an R rating and have the feral kids be eating people because that would at
Yeah,
least make sense in the Mad Max universe. You
right.
know what I'm saying? But yeah, no, I don't dislike the movie, but it
Yeah.
definitely is a watered down version of Max.
And
He
it's
talks
such a
way too
weird
fucking much.
it's a weird note to go out on too, because then for like what 20 years there wasn't a new one.
No,
Like almost 30 years
almost
there
30.
yeah, there was not a new Mad Max, and so everybody's like, well, I guess that's the end of Mad Max is Thunderdome. Like if you were going to go out, you should have gone out on Road Warrior.
I know that's
um
right.
but yeah, so I'm like I said, I'm in the middle of watching Thunderdome now, and then I did recently watch Fury Road, but I'm gonna watch it again anyway. But yeah, we watched Katrina and I watched it because I was telling her that she needed to watch it before we went and saw Furiosa. So just so, and I'm not trying to show her the other ones. I'm like, if you want to watch them, you can, but you don't have to. Um, I was like, he reboots the whole thing with Fury Road. Like it's, and that's what's nice about it too, is like, he's just like, you know what? The original stuff exists and it still kind of exists in this world, but we're rebooting and all that's just kind of the myth of Max before this. So, and which, I mean, that's kind of the way it is anyway. Like the Road Warrior is told from the perspective of the feral kid when he's old. And
Right.
so I like that's just that's the myth of the storyline. But yeah, no, it's a it's just it is a weird series. It's very like tonally, like each movie's tonally different from the any of the other ones. So, but yeah, it's a good series though, and I'm having fun
Yeah,
rewatching it.
I'm just really impressed that he's a septuagenarian and he's still making these kind of hard ass movies.
Oh
Like the
yeah,
stunts are crazy, like practical stunts and all of these, you know, fast cuts and crazy chases and all of these different tribes of people. I
yeah,
mean, if when you think of Wasteland, that's all I think of is the Mad Max type of
yeah, yeah.
scenario. I mean, that's literally
He
that's
created
the
the
blueprint.
blueprint. Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, even from a Dr. Dre video where they're doing,
yeah,
California Love and they're out in the
yeah,
desert like Mad Max. It's like that's what we think of.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, that's actually going to be a movie I'll be able to talk to you about because I'm actually going to
yeah.
go see that one. I'm not missing this.
Yeah, no, no way. Yeah, I got my ticket for it and everything. I'm set. We're watching in IMAX too. So
Ooh, nice.
yeah. So I was just like, nope, nope, getting those tickets, getting that in IMAX. I'm watching that big and loud. Yeah, what was I gonna say? Um, I think it's interesting too, because I did read something recently that Anya Taylor Joy was talking to somebody, and she was just like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. It's like this feeling of isolation and all of this, and people are like, what the hell is going on in these movies? Because everybody on Fury Road had like similar issues, but everybody on Fury Road would come back in a heartbeat to work with him again. So
Absolutely.
it's like as hard as these movies are on these actors, they're just like, yes, and they don't understand what he's doing, because like largely it's in his head. And so like it's once it gets put together that everything comes together, and everybody's like, oh, okay, I see it now. But like while filming it, they're just like, what the fuck is going on with this movie? And but at the end of it though, they're still like, yeah, I would still work with him again. So
Yeah, absolutely. I could see that because you're right. He has his own particular vision, and
yeah,
you might not see it until you see the finished product, and then it's like,
yeah.
wow.
He is one of those that I would definitely call a genius filmmaker. Is just one of those people who, he's got a vision of what he's doing and he accomplishes it, and he's still doing it. I mean, he's still they're setting up and getting ready to make the next one already too, so called The Wasteland. So it's going to be interesting for
I'll
sure.
never forget. He also directed one of the best kids movies ever made.
Yeah, Happy Feet.
Oh, I was saying a Babe Pig in the City, but
Ah, yeah, it's funny. I forgot he did that one.
I
I forgot he
love that
did
one. It's
Babe.
so dark and disturbing,
Yeah,
and kids
yeah,
are watching this movie, but okay.
yeah, yeah. No, it's funny. It's bizarre. His career, like he ended up doing like two really big, like uh kids movies on top of that. Like it's like what the hell? Like this the weirdest. I mean, but the same could be said about Robert Rodriguez. He does some of the greatest, action movies, but then goes and does the Spy Kids movies
Action
that
and
are
horror
really
movies, and then he
popular.
does Spy Kids
Yeah,
films.
so bizarre.
But
All right.
yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm super excited. I cannot wait to see this.
Yeah, yeah. So it's gonna be very cool. I'm super hyped. I have a feeling Furiosa is going to be my number one Mad Max movie. Right now it's Fury Road, but I'm pretty sure Furiosa is gonna overtake that.
I mean, y'all already know why
Okay.
Fury Road would be my number one, but I'm
Yeah,
gonna I'm gonna
we
just
know
leave
it's
Tom Hardy there.
right.
But no, I think, but he made me feel like I was back in that Mad Max world. Because once again, I don't think he had more than 12 lines in that movie, if he had that many.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's what I want. I want to see that because he conveys, he gets across the point that he needs to get across without having to talk. We don't get a lot of yam. So,
right.
so I'm making it sound like I just want my men to be big and strong and silent. Just shut the fuck up. But I really do like that character because he is just that driven, and we know his purpose and we know what he's there for. We don't need to have a whole backstory spiel
Right.
going on. Um, I'm gonna get off that because I feel like I'm
Mhm.
gonna go into a Tom Hardy thing. So, what else do we have to talk about?
Well, what was your next thing?
Oh, my next thing was going to be about what I'm talking about on my podcast. So that was it.
Oh, okay, well let's
I can
hold
do that
that
at the
until
end.
just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, all right. There's one more thing that I want to talk about, and well, two more things that we can talk about. But one more thing I brought up is or that I want to bring up is streaming bundles. So
Oh
because that's
gosh.
been a hot it's been a hot topic online lately, is because Disney Plus slash Hulu is combining with Max for a bundle later this summer, which is not a bad deal. And then Comcast announced that for, I guess it's only for subscribers of Comcast, if you got their internet or their cable or whatever, they are going to have a bundle available that combines Netflix, Peacock, and Apple TV. So it's
Yeah.
and people are making the obvious connection of cable bundles, because cable
Yeah.
has always done this too. They're like, get this bundle of channels all together and blah blah blah. And I
I
get
know.
it,
And
don't
they're
get me
losing
wrong.
people.
And everybody's like, oh well, we've come around in a circle, but like we haven't. I did a whole tweet thread about this, and it's just because we haven't. Like streaming to me is so much a better thing than cable,
Yeah.
because I can choose when and what I want to watch. With cable, you have no choice of when you want to watch something. You
You just have
can,
100 channels that has nothing on. I want to
right,
pick what I want to watch.
exactly. Now, don't get me wrong. There's so much on streamers. I get choice paralysis there too. But I don't have to flip through the channels and then settle on something that I'm just okay with. Whereas, like, if I want to watch something, like I can choose out of the myriad various watch lists that I have on every stupid streamer I have. But I literally subscribe to all of these plus more. Like I get Paramount Plus and Shutter also. So I get a lot of them, and I totaled it all up, and for all the streamers, what I pay per month is about $92 a month for all
That's
the
way
streamers.
cheaper than cable.
It's way cheaper than cable, even with my internet costs, which I think is about $140 right now. But I have damn good internet, and I have Comcast. But I have damn good internet. I have the highest speed, and rarely do I have connection issues. And this is a household that we have what, five adults and one child living in, and we're almost always, somebody is always streaming or
Or
gaming
on their
or using the
computer.
computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're constantly doing stuff, and we very rarely have any kind of issue, and if we do, it's like a whole house-wide issue. It's not just one of us having a like problem where we're not able to do something. So like $92 plus the $140 is what, $232 per month for that. I was paying like $300 a month before for cable and internet costs, because, and I wasn't like, I was getting crap I didn't want sports channels. I didn't want,
Hmm.
you know um uh, uh, various other things that I didn't want. Now I have the ability to pick and choose what I want to watch, um, and bop over to whatever streaming services I want, and don't have to worry about constantly channel surfing. There's no real channel surfing to do. So I always think it's a weird thing when people like compare it to cable because it's a little disingenuous. Like, and well, I don't even think it's disingenuous. I just think people forget what cable was actually like and that cable
Or they
sucks.
never knew what it was like.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that or yeah. So, um, because it's just, yeah, I don't, I just don't understand the people who are like, oh, it's just like cable. No, it's not.
No.
They're bundling. That's the only thing that's like cable. Yes, they're making a bundle that's like cable. But if it's cheaper and I get the same content, then fine. Works for me.
Yeah, I'm with
So,
you. I don't need four different ESPNs and seven different history channels
ugh,
when they're going to play
yeah,
Hitler every 5 minutes. I'm
right,
just, I mean, at this point, it's either Hitler or sharks. And I
right,
don't, make up your mind. I would rather get the streaming stuff that I want. I'm just like you. And 90% of the time, I don't watch anything on the regular cable channels anyway. Like, I don't
yeah,
even watch the news. I don't even watch local news at this point.
no,
I'm just
yeah,
like, what can I watch tonight that will take me away from reality? And that's
yeah,
where I am streaming. If I'm not watching something I already own, I'm streaming on one of the channels that I'm already, currently paying for. So those bundles make perfect sense to me because I
yeah,
don't want all the excess bullshit.
yeah. No, definitely. And yeah, I don't understand the grief about it because it's like they're trying one the streamers are trying to survive. The ultimate thing is that like eventually a lot of these streamers are probably going to die off. If they don't do these bundles, they're going to die off. And
Yeah,
there'll be like three or four major streamers and that's probably going to be Netflix, Max, Disney Plus slash Hulu, and maybe Apple, but even then I couldn't
I
see
don't.
app
Yeah,
I
I
can't
don't
see
know.
Apple surviving that one either. So and I think everything else will end up getting like cut out and
Wrapped up
then
in there. Yeah.
yeah, and I could see something like Shutter surviving because Shutter's just a niche thing anyway that
And
is
that's
pretty
partnered with
popular.
AMC Plus,
Yeah,
and they're also partnered with IFC and Sundance. If anything, those are
yeah,
going to glom together in one little
right.
package.
Exactly.
It's
So I mean
wild.
it's yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah,
It's
no,
a
that's
first world problem. We
right.
always complaining about some bullshit. It's like, really, you're complaining about bundling? Really, you're
Yeah,
not hungry or cold or anything. You
yeah,
got a house, but you're
yeah,
complaining that they're bundling. Don't
right.
buy it. Just
Yeah,
just don't
right?
fucking do it.
That's my thing. Is like if you don't want to buy the bundle, don't buy the bundle. If
Why
you're
you
not
bitching
using
about
it,
it? Just don't
like
do it.
I swear it's the people who do the churn where they only get on Netflix for a month because they want to watch something, then they get off of it. And I can't, I just can't. Even if I'm not using Netflix that much,
Oh, I'm
I just
keeping it.
I can't like I'm just like I don't like to me like I don't mind paying the $23 a month for it if I've got it when when I want it. Because there will be one moment where I'm just like, "Oh, what's on Netflix?" And then like I'll go check something and
Right.
you know, but if I don't have it, then I'm like, "Fuck, I don't have it right now." That would
I have
just
kind of
annoy
been
me.
a Netflix fan since day one, since they
Yeah,
started doing when you could get the disc.
the
I've been
DVDs,
there
yeah.
since the beginning,
Same.
like a dinosaur or caveman. I've just been there. So, I'm not leaving Netflix. That's a
Yeah,
permanent relationship now. We cannot separate. It's
yeah.
just,
Well, and I'm one of
um,
those ones that I'll pay for. I'll not always, but like because there's some stuff that we don't pay for the ad free stuff. But like for YouTube, we pay for the ad free YouTube because it is like ads on YouTube is just very annoying. And we've been doing this for years anyway. So it was when it was YouTube Red and stuff like that's how far back we've been doing it. Um, because it's so much better to like be able to watch that without the pop-up ads that they have.
right.
And but I've seen people complain about that too. They're like, "Oh my God, the ads are getting so bad on YouTube, but I'll never pay for ad free because that's
Well,
how
if you're
they
not
get
gonna
you. That's
pay
their
for it,
whole
then
point."
shut the fuck up about it
It's
and deal
like,
with the ads.
well, and their whole thing is like, but that's what they want you to do. They want you to buy the ad free. No, actually, they don't. They make more money by you
They make
watching
more
the
money
ads.
when you watch the ads.
Yeah, they
That's the
make
whole
more
point.
money. That's why a lot of the streamers have now started adding the ad the ad tier, the ad supported tier, because the ad free tiers have not been making them as much money. And by you going to the ad supported tiers, they make tons of money off those ads. And they're perfectly fine with you doing that because they make more money that way. So just understand that when they're doing ads, they want you to watch the ads. They're not trying to get you to buy their ad free stuff. Their ad free stuff is like, okay, sure, we'll give that to you if you really want it. So
And I don't really even care about the ads because I figured that's the time I can check my phone for about 90 seconds and then I can
right.
go back to whatever the fuck I was
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah, and most of those places like Prime, and Peacock and stuff like that that do have the ads in, are usually just at the beginning. They're
At
not.
the beginning, yeah.
Sometimes Peacock has them throughout the episode. They'll pop in and out, but they're not too bad. Tubi, obviously everybody's used to it because everybody watches Tubi now. So, um, and so everybody's used to the ads. So it's not as big an issue
Once
anymore.
again, this
So,
is a first world problem.
oh, I
If you're
know it's
watching
so
regular
stupid.
TV, you're going to
Yeah,
see ads all day. Y'all will sit there
right.
and watch all of these reality shows like Survivor and Big
Oh my
Brother and all
god.
this stuff. They have commercials. Y'all don't
Yep.
complain about that shit. Dude, just, I mean, I get it. You're paying for a service, but you're paying for the cable that you're seeing the commercials on for. So
Yeah.
just deal with that shit. It's okay.
Yeah.
You'll be okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to bring up the whole bundle thing because it was just like I just had to say, look,
It's
I
hilarious.
get
It's
it.
exactly
I
what you
get it.
said. It's like
Yeah.
people who don't remember what cable was like, or they've
Yeah.
never had to be in that state that we grew up when cable was new.
Right.
So yeah, it hits them a little
Yeah.
differently, I guess.
Right. Well, the last thing I want, well, you brought this up. So I figured we could talk about it momentarily. Was Roger Corman died? He was what, 92?
Yeah.
And so he died. Um, I can't imagine that anybody who's listening to this doesn't know who Roger Corman is. But if you don't, he was a producer, a movie producer, and he made low budget movies, very low budget movies. That's what he was mostly known for. Um, and he had various studios throughout the years. Um, but he basically, so many writers, directors, actors, so many people that you know of today, very famous people, got their starts through him. They Ron Howard, Jack Nicholson, I think James Cameron, tons of people got their starts through him, and eventually made their way up, which is great. Pam Grier said she owes her career to him. Um, and so it's there's so many people who, and so his legacy is not just that he made pretty good, but also terrible movies, but he also started the careers of so many people.
He rippled
um
out into the
yeah.
entertainment industry. And plus there are a lot of famous directors and celebrities who were in awe of him and his works
Hmm.
too. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, and so he's one of those producers that he's and that was what was great about it too. Like I'm sure he directed something here and there, but he was mostly known as a producer. And his legacy will be um like throughout time, like throughout movies. He's weaved himself indelibly into the fabric of movies, from the point he started on and stuff. So it's just, it's a he's a fascinating guy. There's a documentary to check out. It's called Corman's World. Go check that out. It's pretty good. So, but yeah, that's I think that's all I have today. If you want to let listeners know about what you were talking about on your episode this week, the episode of your podcast,
oh,
you
okay.
can wind that up.
Yeah, so still continuing with the Mayhem series of films, and this one was really interesting that I watched, and it was another first time watch. It was called May the Devil Take You,
Okay.
and it's a 2018 Indonesian horror film, kind of. in the vein of Evil Dead as far as like the special effects and all of the gore and stuff. And now that you talked about bundling, it is streaming on Netflix if anybody wants to watch it. It spawned a couple of sequels, but I have not seen the sequels yet. But after watching the first one, I kind of have to see the sequels now. I have to see how this is going to play out. But
Hmm.
that's the one that's on tap for this week, and it's filled with a lot of really gross splattery things, and I was like a kid in a candy store. But if you don't like reading subtitles, then you might not like it because
Right.
it is subtitled, but absolutely outstanding in my humble horror nerd opinion. Um, can't really wait to see the sequels. I have to wait on my husband because he didn't watch this one, and now he wants to go and watch it so we can watch the sequels together. So
Gotcha.
I have to play the waiting game. That's probably gonna be another 6 months before he gets
Right.
this watched. But but yeah, that's what's on tap for Mayhem this week. May the devil take you.
Okay. Yeah, I have to look into that one. I'm not against subtitles. I'm not against foreign movies at all. I do have to be in the right headspace,
Hmm.
mostly so that I don't get distracted. Because the problem is obviously if I'm at home and watching something, I look at my phone a lot. And so so it's a little bit harder to do, harder to pay attention if it's a foreign film and I got to pay attention to the subtitles. I'm like, oh crap, I got to pay attention. So yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. Get me interested with the Evil Dead vibes.
Yeah,
So
at least watch the trailer. Even if
yeah,
if you watch a trailer and it doesn't grab you, then no big
yeah,
deal.
yeah. All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you coming back, talking some new stuff this week, and I can't wait to talk Furiosa with you next week.
Oh my gosh. That's gonna be we might just have to talk about just that. I don't
Right, right,
know. Spoiler free, really
right.
quickly, just run down what we love about it and then just shut up.
Definitely. All right. Well, thanks again, and yeah, we'll talk to you next week.
All right.
Stay creepy. On today's episode, we'll be discussing the MCU Disney Plus show Miss Marvel with returning guest Ashley Thomas. Ashley is the staff writer for fangirlish.com and the host of Podcast 616 and We Are Starfleet. Welcome back to the show, Ashley.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Rob.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and like I said, we're going to be talking Miss Marvel today, which is one of the more, which is one of the shows like Moon Knight that is a character who has yet to have appeared in the MCU prior to their show.
Right.
Um, Whereas like with some of the other shows like WandaVision, Hawkeye, Falcon and Winter Soldier, those were characters who had existed in the MCU beforehand, and we're getting a little bit more of an expanded um role to play, which was great. It's always good to get some of these side characters who've only had little bits and pieces, um, and finally get a little bit more due. But the whole in the whole Disney Plus aspect of things also gave characters a chance who probably wouldn't have gotten a movie otherwise. And that's been a fun process as well, getting to see some of these other probably more minor characters get a chance to kind of um, blossom and grow as well. So, and one of the more popular characters in recent years is Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, and it's great to be able to see her get a series, which then went into a movie. So she got to expand the opposite direction than some of the other characters did, where they were in the movies and then got their own show. She already had her own show and got to be in one of the movies, and I like that the way that they did that with the Disney Plus shows is that because prior to the Disney Plus shows, they had a few shows like the Inhumans and Agents of Shield and Agent Carter and stuff, where they were characters that were in the movies that crossed over into their own shows, but they weren't fully canon. They were canon until they weren't. And whereas with these shows, these Disney Plus shows are fully canon. Everything that happens in these shows matters, and it flows into another movie. Consequences, things that happen in these shows can have consequences in movies down the line.
Mhm.
And I really love that aspect of it because it really means that these shows matter, and they're not just throwaway shows just to get these characters out there. And that I appreciate a lot, because when they took away the canonicity of stuff like Agents of Shield and Agent Carter and everything, it just want I mean it's not necessarily always a bad thing. It did free them up to do things that maybe they weren't going to be able to do otherwise. But it also puts them in this weird, like, now kind of with the multiverse and stuff like that, it just kind of puts it into, okay, this is what's going on in the multiverse version of these characters, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's fun to see the consequences of shows and movies kind of colliding back and forth. It's the same thing with, Wanda, from WandaVision, the events of that movie, or that show, um having consequences in Doctor Strange's multiverse of madness. And so I love that they did that, where things were able to cross back and forth in a way that made sense, and was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, and Miss Marvel is such a fan favorite character from the
Yeah.
comics. I was really glad to see her get her own show, and honestly played to perfection by Iman Vellani.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And that's another aspect that I definitely want to talk about, is that Iman Vellani herself is a major comic book fan.
Oh yeah.
And she's like literally the perfect actress to play Kamala, because Kamala herself is a huge, in the world of the comic book and in the world of the show. She's a huge fan of the superheroes and everything, and so like getting an actress who then also is exactly like that, was such a huge plus, and she does so good at bringing all that across in the show.
Well, and it's more than just that she's a big Marvel nerd. It's also that, I mean, Kamala, she's like, Kamala is me. Kamala is me. She's also Pakistani Muslim.
Yeah,
Similar upbringing, has, that big fangirl energy.
right.
And gosh, she's just so sweet and charming. And talk about, comic book nerd. Apparently there were a couple of times on the set of the Marvels where she would be all like, no, 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 Kamala wouldn't do that, or actually that's not how that happened in the comics, and like would go correct the writers, which I think is one, like, that's like next level, like, geek.
Oh yeah.
I'm down for it. She
Yeah.
was so great like that. But
Well, and now she's taken that to an even next level, because now she's actually writing co-writing the comic books of Miss Marvel,
yeah.
in the real world now. Like, she's actually, like, Iman Vellani is a co-writer on the current Miss Marvel comic books that have been coming out lately. So I love that she's taken the love for that character and expanded on it in such a way that, now she's getting to kind of help guide the storyline of the comic book universe for her own character. So
Yeah, yeah, and
it's
I
so
I
much
read
fun.
that. I read that series. She did a 4 issue run, Miss Marvel, the New Mutant,
Yes.
and it's really good. It's
Yeah.
really good. So definitely worth checking out if you have not read it. It's now in a trade if you aren't into the individual issues, but it's only 4 little comics, not a big deal. But yeah, it's a great series. I made sure to pick that up as soon as I found out about it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, no. But yeah, let's get into the comic, or the TV series itself. It's an interesting series because the character herself, we got to backtrack just a little bit. The character in the comic books is an inhuman. Her
Hmm.
origin comes through the course of An interesting little bit of uh time in the comic book universe because they've never come out and officially said it, and they probably never will. But the X-Men were kind of taking a back burner in the comic books because people suspect that um because at the time Fox owned the rights to the X-Men on film, that Marvel Comics were kind of trying to downplay
Hmm.
the X-Men and raise up the Inhumans, which have a similar vibe to it,
Right.
in the fact that once members of the Inhumans become adolescents, they can be exposed to what's called the Terrigen mists, and once they're exposed to the Terrigen mists, they can potentially get powers. They don't always get powers, but the vast majority of them do.
Hmm.
And so it's a whole thing with their DNA and everything else. So it's this whole similarity between mutants and inhumans, that they were trying to raise it up. And and people who were watching stuff like Agents of Shield at the time will remember that they were really pumping up the Inhumans on screen as well. There was a
Yeah.
huge storyline going on in the Agents of Shield show. They were spinning it out into the Inhumans TV show that didn't do it well at all. And in the comic books, they were really pumping up the Inhumans. There were multiple Inhuman titles going on. They were really trying to push that hard. And it didn't end up working out on either screen or page. Eventually, after a few years, there was an Inhumans versus X-Men storyline, and it just everything kind of fizzled out. And then, once Marvel got the Fox, when Disney bought Fox, and Marvel was like, okay, let's just bring back the X-Men stuff.
Hmm.
Um, then, again, they're never gonna say it. They're never gonna, tell people, yeah, that's what we were doing because they don't want to look bad. But
Right.
that's what everybody kind of saw from the outside. And so she came about during this time period. There was a huge one of the aspects of the Inhuman storyline at the time was that Black Bolt, the leader of the Inhumans, had blown up this Terrigen bomb, basically. Um, Seemingly killing himself, but also releasing Terrigen into Earth's atmosphere. And basically anybody on the planet who had that quirk in their DNA could potentially become an inhuman when they were exposed to the cloud of Terrigen that was going across the Earth.
Right.
And so what ended up happening was at one point, it crosses over Jersey City and crosses over Kamala, and she gains powers. Now, in the comic books, her powers are different than they are in the TV show. In the comic books, her powers are that she can shapeshift, much
Mm.
like the Skrulls do. Like in her first appearance, she actually even takes on the appearance of Carol Danvers. And like costume and everything. She can't switch back at first. And so during the course of the issue and everything like that, she figures it out. She um manages to get herself back under control and learns her powers and stuff like that. So they've taken some of the stuff from the comic books and kind of figured out a way to incorporate it into the TV show itself, because in the comic books, she does a lot where she grows bigger. She uses her shape changing to kind of grow bigger or shrink, do these really large fists. And you saw that in the show where she used the light powers to make these really giant fists or hands a lot of times. And so that aspect of it, they just kind of figured out a different way of doing it, which was cool. I liked being able to see that because it was a little bit jarring at first because you're like, okay, it's kind of disappointing that she doesn't have her shape shifting powers, but I understand it in context of the show. needing to kind of change up the powers a little bit,
Yeah.
especially when they wanted to eventually tie it into Carol herself in the Marvels.
Right.
So it made sense story wise. But yeah, so it's an interesting beginning for her in terms of what her powers are in the comic books, because her powers are still that way in the comic books. So it's a little bit funky. You always have to remember that the MCU is always going to be an alternate reality version of what's in the comic books. It's never going to follow the comic books 100%. They're going to have to make changes. And that's okay. It's still fun. And as long as they keep to what the core of the character is, then that's all that matters. And they do a really good job at that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned in what you were talking about with the comic books, the new comic books that Iman Vellani is co-writing, that the one of the most recent comics is called Miss Marvel: The New Mutant. So in the TV show, we get this little thing in the last episode. We're going to jump ahead real quick, but the in the last episode, it's revealed that she has a mutation in her genes, and you get the little teeny tiny little bit of the X-Men cartoon theme song um in there. Just basically, yes, she's a mutant. Now in the comic books at the time when that episode came out, she wasn't. She was still an Inhuman. That was all she was. But there was a recent storyline in the comic books where she was helping Spider-Man um, uh, fight some guy, some villain of his, and she ended up dying. Well,
Mm.
in the mutant, the X-Men comic books and everything like that, they had a way of bringing the mutants back to life
Hmm.
through clone bodies and this whole deal. You'd have to read the whole Krakoan era to understand what the hell is going on in there.
Right.
It's a lot, but you know, it boils down to they were able to reclone them, and so that's what ended up happening is that um, Kamala was able to come back because lo and behold, she's actually a mutant this whole time. She's still an inhuman, but she's a mutant also. And so it's an interesting twist because I think she's the first inhuman slash mutant that anybody's known of. And
Yeah.
so, she is actually a mutant and actually fought alongside some of the X-Men in recent times. So it's an interesting wrinkle to her, and I think that this is the kind of synchronicity they try to do between the shows and the comic books, where they try to keep the comic books separate, but they try to play off of each other as much as possible. Um, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Like when uh, Samuel Jackson came out and he was Nick Fury on screen. Nick Fury in the comic books for decades had been this crusty old white dude. Um, and they eventually figured out a storyline to introduce a new black Nick Fury who ended up being the son of the original Nick Fury. And he's been the Nick Fury in the MCU since then.
Right.
And so it's interesting when they kind of try to figure out a way to make it work between the two, to not be exactly the same, but just be enough to, if somebody were to come from the show or movies and then come into the comic books and not be completely jarred by it, which I don't feel like there's enough crossover between, like, definitely I would say most of the people who read comic books are watching the movies and such, but not everybody who's watching the shows are coming back to read the comic books. It's never happened in that thing. They've tried time and time again to get new readers on board, like especially something like Endgame. Endgame was huge. You would figure, okay, there's going to be droves of people coming to the comic books. Nope, doesn't happen. Um, so which is unfortunate. It would be great if people could come back and check out some of the comic books. Some of them do, but most don't. And but they do try to have some synchronicity to it, good and bad. I think sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's bad when you take away Hawkeye's awesome costume, you put him in just the the plain clothes that he looks like he's in half the time in the TV or in the movies, it kind of loses something.
Mm.
So, but that's my own gripe. But yeah, no, but that all being said, getting back to the Miss Marvel show itself, because I had to tell the original origin to get to this origin.
Had to
Um,
say all that to say this.
yeah, so it's a lot. But so that's what's interesting is because they had to change it up because they had gotten away from the Inhuman stuff in the MCU arena. They were like, okay, let's not make her an Inhuman now. And plus they probably couldn't figure out a way to go through that process and try to explain it all and everything. They're just like, let's figure out a way that we can do it and sneakily make her a mutant.
Well,
Um,
and even being able to use the word mutant, because they could have used the word mutant without her being an X-Men,
sure,
except that Fox had the right to the word mutant.
exactly.
So, until they got those rights back, I mean, that was why they played up the Inhumans for so long.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that did not work out as well as they would have hoped, which I recently, and by recently, I mean last year, I went back and watched the Inhumans because I had missed the whole thing whenever it aired. And you know what? That wasn't that bad. Y'all need to calm down.
I think again, I think it was mostly it was kind of a backlash against all the Inhuman stuff that had been going on in Agents of Shield and them trying to push it so hard. And I think there were some justifiably concerned feelings over this Inhumans TV show that they cut off Medusa's hair, which is like, okay, well, that kind of weird, the whole
Mhm.
taking away one of their powers completely. Like I get maybe it might work story wise, but it just felt like they were kind of skimping on the budget. So
Mm. Yeah.
so I
Me not having any context for that character, I'm
yeah,
just like, it's hair, it'll grow back once you get her powers back, once it grows back. But
yeah.
I'm also like Queen of Chop It. I was like, girl, you're rocking that short
Yeah.
hair.
No, and I mean that's fine, but yeah, the character's whole power is her hair.
Right,
So
right, right.
like so everybody's just like, okay, well this sucks.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I get that. I get that. But that was funny. That was me, just not
Yeah.
really having the context for the character, being
Right.
like, won't it grow back? Like, what's, but
Yeah.
anyway, I
Yeah.
digress.
But yeah, since they weren't able to do the Inhuman stuff because they were just like they were backing way off of that now, they were just like, okay, let's come up with a different way of doing it. And I like the way that they did it. They have the bangle that she
Hmm.
gets kind of activate her powers in a way.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and we find out more about the bangle through the course of this movie, but we find out even more about it in the Marvels. Um, but so it's an interesting. I really like this show because it takes you into a different culture than we're normally exposed to in um I would say mainstream media. So
Hmm.
having the main character be a Pakistani Muslim um is really cool because I mean that's the people um the character herself being in the comic books was her family and her friends and everything about her being a Pakistani Muslim and everything was part of her what she was in the comic books as well.
Right.
And that's what was great about it was that you had this chance at some bigger representation. It's not just another white dude who got powers. And so, you got a young teenage girl who has a faith different from the larger homogenous white population. And so it was really cool to be able to see that and to get um some other stuff going on, and that was even with having Moon Knight just be on Disney Plus also just before this. We're starting to get some more expanded cultures
Hmm.
going on in here, and I really enjoy that because it's it just goes to show that there's more out there in the world and that anybody can be a hero, given the right circumstances. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say the thing that I found really relatable about Miss
Yeah,
Marvel is, while I am neither Pakistani or Muslim, if you'd ever met me in high school, I was exactly like Kamala Khan. Girl looks like she even raided my closet. Like superhero t-shirts, flannel, jeans, Chuck Taylors. I mean, that's what I
yeah,
wear now. That's what I wore in high school. You know, I, I just that's what I like to wear. So
yeah,
I found that aspect of her character really relatable. But the other thing that I found really relatable to her is that well, I'm a Christian. I
right,
really related to this concept of her faith being like a very important part of her life, and you get to see that on screen in a way that is respectful and not cheesy.
right.
And I really enjoyed that about the TV series. Also, I also have wildly overbearing parents that do not understand anything I'm interested in. So I could definitely say like, oh, you can only go to the con if your dad goes with you, and you have to wear
Yeah,
this really embarrassing getup that I made for you.
yeah,
Because definitely have had similar things happen. It's like, here you have to wear this thing that looks ridiculous and it will, make you want to go wear a paper bag on your head before you're even seen by anybody. So, yes, felt all of that. So, Miss Marvel from the word go, and the show was my introduction to the character. I knew who she was, but I never
right.
read any of the comics,
Oh, okay.
and and I purposely did that because I wanted to kind of be able to take the show on its own merits.
Right.
Um, Now since then I've gone back and read Miss Marvel comics, and I'm like, this girl is awesome. I
Yeah.
love her to bits. Uh, but I did that because I wanted to be able to, just kind of take it all in and see, can they make this character accessible to someone who's never read any of those comics, and Marvel is great at that. They
Yes.
did a really great job. So I connected right away with this character, and I have like a couple of characters in comics that, yeah, I would love to be She-Hulk, but in reality, I'm some combination of Squirrel Girl and Miss Marvel. Uh, that's who I am in real life. So,
That's funny.
anyway, but yeah,
Yeah.
I really love this show, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. No, and that's what is fun. I love that, I feel like she is a great character that can be like Spider-Man, she's a teenager and she can be this kind of proxy character for younger people to kind of get into that world and kind of see in themselves these characters who, because it's hard to be able to like, to identify with Captain America or, any of these other characters. Because most of them are adults, and the whole concept behind Spider-Man and even creating Miss Marvel for the comic books was Miss Marvel was meant to be a new teen character that could hopefully bring in teenage readers who they could identify something in themselves.
Hmm.
And that's what's great is that somebody like you who, you know, can recognize something in her that resonates with you.
Hmm.
And that's a lot of fun. As somebody who myself grew up as a huge comic book fan, especially in my teen years.
Hmm.
But I grew up in the 80s. So liking comic books was not a cool thing in the 80s.
Well,
Um,
it wasn't a cool thing in the 90s either. At least not where I grew up. They're all like, "Yeah,
yeah,
you nerd. Here, I'm going to throw you in the trash can now." So.
yeah. Yeah, I got my share of being picked on and bullied for, enjoying comic books because comic books like, and it's so funny too. There used to be a podcast I listened to. I don't remember what it was called or whatever, but they used to talk to um the host would talk to actually, actual comic book writers and artists and stuff.
Mhm.
And the common thread through it was always interesting because they would talk about how they read comic books until they got into high school, And then they gave up comic books because comic books weren't cool. And
Mm.
so then sometime around college time or sometime in their mid 20s or whatever, they came back to comic books. And that's when they like, got caught back up with what they were doing. And I always like felt like it just like I was just like, guys checking out, man. Like
Yeah.
I read comic books throughout high school. Sure, I didn't get the girl all the time, but you know, but I chose to be me, and
Yeah,
who I was
same.
always going to be. But at the same time, I'm not a famous comic book writer like them, so maybe I should have given up comic books for a while.
Right, right. And then you would have become a famous comic book writer.
Exactly,
And we would not be having this conversation, so.
exactly. No. No. But I think I think it's interesting to look back on that and just be like, because nowadays we can't I think by and large the comic books because of the movies, because basically 2000 on, once the X-Men and Spider-Man movies hit, those kind of helped usher in this um era that we live in now for the past 20 plus years of comic book movies dominating the popular culture.
Hmm.
That even if you don't read comic books, you can see somebody wearing a t-shirt. And don't get me wrong, even in the 80s, comic book characters themselves were popular-ish, but you really didn't have a lot of comic book like stuff in terms of t-shirts. You had some here and there,
Right.
but mostly you didn't have that stuff. I didn't have a lot of that stuff when I was in my teens and 20s because it just wasn't available.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
now,
I
yeah,
remember seeing the like occasional ad, like in a
yeah,
comic, like, send off for this X-Men t-shirt or whatever, but
yeah, but
you
it
know,
was so rare and you never saw anybody wearing that stuff. And I totally would have
right.
been wearing that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Um, I wear it now. But it's mostly I wear horror t-shirts these days, but yeah.
Hmm.
But it's interesting to look back on that, era as a teenager. And when I was a teenager, there was actually like in the early 90s, there was a comic book that came out called The New Warriors.
Hmm.
And that was a group of teenage heroes. And so that was kind of my and I was already into the other comic books and stuff like that, but it was a really cool time to like find a group of heroes that was really fun and interesting that was around my age. And so that was a fun time to have. And then just going back to, having that entry level character of somebody who readers can identify with, younger readers can identify with, and enjoy their adventures. And I
Hmm.
think that's what makes, and that's what is good about the Miss Marvel TV show as well, is that you can show new, younger audiences this show, and hopefully they will get that same kind of um, fascination with the larger comic book world through that character, because they'll see, oh, this is a character who really loves these characters, and the whole thing about the Avengers and everything else, and just be like, yeah, this is a character who I resonate with. And that's what I love about Kamala, both on the page and on the screen, is that she brings um that to every version of herself.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's a lot of fun. um
Definitely.
but one aspect, it's funny too, because there, during the course of this first episode, and you mentioned it earlier, she's trying to go to this thing called Avenger Con, where she's going to cosplay as Miss Marvel. She's got a whole costume her and her friend Bruno have made, that is they hope is going to win the grand prize. Although I will say some of the other costumes on that stage were much much better. But again, the hers was great, don't get me wrong, but
Right.
uh but it's but it was fun to see um that I didn't catch it the first time I watched it. This is only the second time I watched through the series. Um but the actual Avenger Con is being held at Camp Lehigh, which I didn't even connect.
Yes.
I didn't even catch it that first time. That because Camp Lehigh, as we all know, is the place where Captain America was created. It's the base that he was on, that where he was literally created. And so I didn't even make that connection. Plus the fact that she lives in Jersey City, and Camp Lehigh is in New Jersey. So there's this whole like I didn't even catch it all the first time. And when watching it this time, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Although it's a little weird that this base that, you know, was this huge thing, and then was completely disused by the time of the Winter Soldier, because they actually had to break into it. Um,
Hmm.
and then by the time of Miss Marvel, it's open and available, and they're doing an Avenger Con thing there. Now, don't get me wrong. By the time Miss Marvel comes around, it's post end game. Um, Captain America is gone, to doing whatever he's. And people are just assuming one, we
Hmm.
find out through the Hawkeye series that they think he's up on the moon. Um, and or no, wait, maybe that's the Falcon and Winter Soldier series. One of those series we find out that people think he's on the moon.
You're right.
And it's so it's like more this celebration of who Captain America was. I mean, and that's so funny too, because as much as like we've gotten some bits and pieces about Tony and Iron Man himself was like the major character of the MCU, um going through Endgame. Post Endgame, I think we've gotten more nods to Captain America than anything else. We got this, and here we got the shield being added to the Statue of Liberty. We've got Rogers the musical. Um, there was one other thing I was just thinking of. Um, oh, and then the new Smithsonian exhibit. Like there was
Oh
already
yeah,
the
that's
Captain
right.
America. There was already
Hmm.
the Captain America exhibit, but they had expanded it
Right.
since the events of Endgame. So
Right.
it's just I found it interesting that you see more um stuff of uh Steve, i- post Endgame than you do of Tony. Um, so I thought it's just a little interesting tidbit to that they focused on, that I just noticed going through these when it happened on this show. So
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
and the other thing I really enjoyed about all of the stuff at Avenger Con is that it had the real feel of going to a small local con. Like if you look in the background, I in particular the one I really remember was a an exhibit that said things Hulk has smashed. Like you can't get Hulk, you can't get any of the actual Avengers to show up. Let's like what has Hulk smashed? Well,
yeah,
this street, this building, this bad guy. you
yeah,
know, it's stuff like that that I found really enjoyable. It's like I have been to little cons like that, and I it
yeah,
just it made me feel right at home.
right. Yeah, anybody who's been to a small con,
Hmm.
and this is the very different definition of a small con. Like this is like they hype it up before you get to it. They hype it up as this huge con, but when you get to it, when you see it, if anybody's been to a con, um, this is a small con,
Right.
because it's all one room. It's not very big of a room either, and it's tall because they've got a big Ant-Man thing going on in there, but it's not very spread out. It's very tightly packed. And yeah, and don't get me wrong, that I've been to New York Comic Con, and that thing is huge and it's tightly packed. Um, but it's this is definitely a small con. And yeah, when you go to small cons, they've just got the small little things. It's so funny. It's just this was the greatest representation of a small con I've seen. So
Hmm.
it was
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Yeah. That
Um,
was great.
yeah, but it's the the first episode sets up a lot of good things with this, a bunch of this, you mostly with her family. You get introduced to her mom, her dad, and her brother, and the brother's getting married and stuff. And you go back and read the comic books and stuff like that. There was a much longer progression for some of these storylines, because they've got a lot more time to kind of do it. Whereas we jump in kind of like midway through some of this. Um, and so, and I love being able to have, her friends, as well, with Bruno obviously being the big, um the closest friend and stuff, but you also had Nakia, and then you had the somewhat antagonist Zoe. So
Right.
I liked having a lot of that, right here, and these are all characters straight from the comics as well. And so it was a good way to bring the comic books as much into live action as they did. Because sometimes, with some of these, uh shows and movies and stuff like that, they have to they have to push a lot aside because there's been decades worth of stuff. Whereas with, um Miss Marvel, there's not so much that they've had to push aside yet. So, which is
Right.
good. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
but yeah, it's, um but we're introduced to all this stuff. But and she's given this, bangle. She finds this bangle, and this, and a bangle is a bracelet for anybody who doesn't know or who hasn't seen the show yet. And it's, in a box of stuff, from her grandmother. And she ends up, putting it on at the Avenger Con, and that activates her powers. Um, and like I said before, her powers are different in this than they are in the comic book. Like I said, in the comic book, she's a shapeshifter, but in here, the bangle activates her powers, which are, light based. Um, Basically, she can make what are called hard light constructs. Um, it's literally what it sounds like. She just makes objects out of light, that are hard, that have substance to them. Um, and so it's a very interesting power to have. I thought it was a neat little twist on it. Like I said before, she's able to still make, because of the nature of being able to do that, she can still make the giant hands that you see her use a lot in the comic books.
Right.
Um, and so it's a lot of fun being able to see her be able to use the powers in a similar but different way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Definitely agree.
um, but yeah, it's just it's I I really the I don't want to go episode by episode, but it's fun being able to get introduced to all of these characters, and get a good sense of who they are. The actors do a really good job at, portraying them, and giving you just enough, of each of the characters, to, understand who they are and what they're like as people. And it's a lot of fun. They Each episode just kind of builds on each other. She, like, by the next episode, she's, jumping into it. She's learning her powers, and during the course of Avenger Con, by the way, she her powers kind of go wild, and she ends up knocking something down and almost hurting people, and almost hurting her, um schoolmate Zoe, who's also there dressed up as a variant of Miss Marvel. And so but she ends up saving her, and in very Flash Thompson-esque way, she uh really loves this hero, while also, I don't think Zoe hates, uh, Kamala anyway. She's just kind of dismissive of her. She's not like Flash, who's a bully. um
Right.
and so it's interesting to see this aspect of her, get, and she coins the name of Nightlight as the character's name, which is a terrible name.
Well, I also really enjoyed, in this the second episode where Nakia's like, can't believe she's bragging about getting saved by the budget Captain Marvel, and
Right.
Kamala's like, thank you. And when I first watched this episode, my husband turns and looked at me. He's like, "You would say exactly that because you've been called short Gwendolyn Christie." And I was like, "Yes!" I was so excited about it.
That's
So I
too
was like,
funny.
"I'll take that."
Right. Right? I mean, it seems like an insult, but it's really not.
Like, you know
So,
what? You know what? I'll take budget or bargain bin Captain Marvel or off-brand cereal Captain Marvel. I'll roll with that. I can
right?
definitely roll with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're being compared to your idol, in some way, like that's awesome. And I mean, you see just how much she idolizes Captain Marvel because her room is plastered with posters and pictures and everything else. And it's so fun too because the actual artwork from the comic books are in there as well. There's a
Hmm.
huge poster of Captain Marvel that was used with artwork from Adam Hughes. There's uh some other artwork in there. Jamie McKelvey is actually the one who created the costumes, the modern costumes for both Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel's costume.
Mm.
And so that image of her in the last episode of her sitting on the lamp in her costume and everything, that is actually taken
Right.
from a comic book cover that Jamie McKelvey did during her original comic book run.
Yeah, they
Um,
did a really good job of acknowledging stuff from the comics because I think if I'm given to understand correctly, most, if not all, of the titles for the episodes are titles from are titles from Miss Marvel stories in the
mm,
comics. I know definitely the first two or three and then the last episode are all titles of Miss Marvel
yeah.
books. So,
I do like because of the twist in the origin, they have to, again, twist a few things here, and we're introduced to this concept of these she comes into conflict with these people who are also searching for this bangle that she has. Um this group of people called the clandestine.
mhm.
And um and they are people from an alternate world um that if opened, their world will kind of remake our world. And so she finds out later on. Um, and so that's the core conflict going on in this is one, discovering her powers, learning how to use them, and then two, having to deal with these clandestine people, which also ties into her family and the history of Pakistani culture and history and everything, which was really fascinating because prior to the show, I and a lot of people had never even heard of the partition.
I am a lot of people.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
had
amazing.
no clue about it.
No clue. Yeah, and it's so weird and everything like that too. How um deficient our education system is
Yeah.
sometimes because there are definitely things I'm still learning. I just turned 50 a couple of weeks ago, and there are still things I'm learning about history. And I mean, of course, I'm not going to know everything that happened in every moment of history and everything like that, but big things like that just feel like I should have heard about that at least once before watching it on a TV show. um, but that's what I love about it too, is that you can get this piece of history that we haven't been exposed to very much in American education and culture. And so I love that, they incorporated that into the show itself because they were able to tell a story that was very personal to the character and very personal to Pakistanis, who all Pakistanis who might be watching this show. And I love that they incorporated that. It's so fun. Not the the piece of history itself, but just
Mhm.
being able to have access to that. Um, and I like to think I'm a history person. I'm I'm more of a folklore and mythology person. But I do like history and I like being able to learn new things. And so, that was it was very much an interesting couple episodes. Because it's mentioned a couple of times early in the series. And then midway through this series, um, Kamala and her mom go to Karachi to go visit her grandmother. And while there, she gets more information about her family's past, and the ties to these clandestine people, um, and uh, just all of that history. Like I said, this whole thing about the partition where um, they separated Pakistan and India. Um, and it's so fascinating. I'm not doing it justice at all. If you haven't watched the series, please go watch the series because it's very interesting. So
Yeah. Well, and I when I first watched uh the series and was learning about, oh, this whole insane thing of partition happened, I'm thinking this is the second time I have watched a comic book TV show, and it has educated me about a thing that actually occurred in history that I did not learn in school.
yeah.
And the first time was Watchmen
Mm.
telling me
Yeah,
about
the
the
Tulsa. Yeah.
the Tulsa massacre of Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
And I didn't learn about that. I had heard about it before I'd seen
mm,
Watchmen, but I didn't learn about that either until I was an adult. It wasn't until like a few years ago, like even 2 years ago, that I had even heard the word Juneteenth.
yeah,
Even though that's been a huge thing for like 100 years, I was like, why am I not hearing about this stuff? And it's largely because we live in a white Eurocentric
hmm,
society,
right.
and they don't, as white people ourselves, we don't get exposed to that unless we know people in that culture. And so it is kind of frustrating to have to rely on popular culture to give us pieces of history. And
Listen, at
so
least somebody's doing it.
yes, yeah, exactly. And I love that. And I love that we're finally getting this kind of information, somehow. And
Right.
then it gives me the chance to go, okay, well, what is this? And I can look it up and get a little bit more context and history from it. And so
Hmm.
yeah, definitely. Um, Go ahead and continue with what you were saying about
Oh, no, no, no. But I learning about, the who's and what's and whys of this happening. Uh, one, what a horrible thing.
it. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
two, I, you know, people kind of grump a little bit about, like, kind of the middle of the series is where a lot of folks are like, they could have tightened some of this up, or we could have done without this. But I actually really, really enjoyed getting to see the flashbacks of Kamala's grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And one, I was really endeared to Kamala's, uh I guess it would be her great grandfather,
Yeah,
uh because I is like, what a wonderfully kind and gentle man. Like, you don't see that real often.
right.
Like, a lot of dudes are, supposed to be kind of tough or machismo. And, this is a guy who's crippled, and uh the first thing he says is, you know, uh you look like you're in trouble. Don't step on my rose bushes, but it looks like you're in more trouble than they are.
Yeah,
I'm like, what a sweet guy. And you're like, hey, you can rest at my house, like, because you look like you're on the run. So, you know, I was really impressed
yeah.
with him. And I really like the actress that played Aisha too. I thought she was really
Mm-hmm.
good. And I don't have any complaints really about any of the casting choices they made for this
Yeah,
show. Even
not at
like
all.
the less prominent characters. I thought everybody was really good. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I just learning history, which I didn't get to do before.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and it's like the actress that played Najma, the leader of the clandestine,
hmm
and she's I don't believe I'd seen her anywhere before that, but I've seen her since then. She also played a
yes.
similar character in the movie Polite Society.
Yes, I was
Um,
about to say that. Polite
yeah,
Society is amazing.
it is amazing. It's
What a
such a
great
good movie.
film. What a
Yeah,
great film.
yeah, definitely. If you like what you see with Miss Marvel, definitely go check out Polite Society. It's a lot of
Oh
fun.
yeah. Oh yes.
It's about a teen girl who wants to be a stunt person.
Yes.
And it's and then there's this whole conspiracy thing that happens with her sister and this whole thing. It's so fun and and very much like I said, if you like what you see in Miss Marvel, you'll like this movie because they're very similar.
Yes.
Not in a they're copying each other way because they're not at all, but they're just very similar in tone and everything. And so it's a lot of fun. So once you see Miss Marvel, go check out Polite Society. I wanted to see that one in the theater, but I didn't get a chance to. But I caught it on streaming later and very much enjoyed it. So
Yeah. I caught the very last showing before it went out of theaters at my local theater, and it was definitely worth watching on a big screen.
oh,
It was so much fun. Really loved it.
yeah. But yeah, no, that you know, I know we're jumping around and everything, but it's hard to kind of talk about it without jumping around. And it's just the show is a lot of fun. There's she there's you see what's it called, the Department of Damage Control. This is where you really, between this and Spider-Man No Way Home, you see them as where they become this shield like entity.
hmm
um they seem like they are now the authority when it comes to superhuman activities. um but you also get to see when that is unchecked also, because the person who's mostly hunting down um all the stuff about Kamala, uh it is this woman who's really trying to catch her and capture her and everything, doing whatever is necessary, even when she goes against her superiors instructions on it. And so it was good to see something like that where it's that kind of unchecked power, but then you know her get her a little bit of a comeuppance at the end.
hmm
Um, not as much as I would have liked. She just gets a stern talking to. But it's interesting to see this entity of damage control becoming um um bigger and bigger every time we see them. That they've definitely become, between them and Sword, they seem to be taking on those two areas of what Shield used to deal with.
Right.
So although like Shield only kind of dealt with superhuman stuff um as a after effect of what they had already been doing for decades. So it wasn't really their sole purpose, like it seems like with damage control.
Right.
Um, but it is great to see the one character who you see a lot of in No Way Home. That guy is also in the, I don't even know what his name is, um, like the character or the actor. But he's been popping up in every instance of damage control for the last couple of years. He's been popping up with that.
I
So
had
it's
totally forgotten they were in No Way Home.
yeah.
Oh,
Um, yeah, they're all through the beginning of that one. So,
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
um, but it's the show is a lot of fun. It's great to see um all these aspects get tied together. And you get, and it's fun to be able to see her costume come together as well. Like,
Hmm.
throughout the series, the first couple of episodes, she's just wearing the cobbled together Captain Marvel costume that she made for the con. And then when she's in Karachi, she's not really wearing a costume so much. She gets the mask,
Right.
but that's it. I think her mom gives her the mask, doesn't she? Or no? Somebody.
Bruno. Bruno
Okay,
gives
yeah,
her the
Bruno
mask.
gives her the mask.
Hmm.
But by the end of the series, her mom gives her the costume. And then her dad is actually the one who gives her the name. So I
Yes.
think that's cute that her family, once they learn about her, um, that they embrace it. They're still concerned for her, because her mom's very overbearing, in the beginning, and you get to learn kind of what that is for her as well. Because once they go back to Karachi, and you get to see
Hmm.
the interaction between the grandmother and the mom, you see that they also had a very similar relationship, and that um, it feels like Kamala's mom just doesn't want her making her, like, not necessarily making mistakes, because her mom doesn't seem to be like regretful of anything she did, because it seems like her and her dad met fairly early on, um and there wasn't like crazy things that happened or anything, but just that she just is trying to just keep her safe, is ultimately where it comes from.
Hmm.
And But she's, gives her the costume, and kind of loosening the reins a little bit, because she can see, look, she can take care of herself. And so it's nice to see that by the end, that they're a little bit more accepting, and you get a little bit more of that in the Marvels. Later you get to see more of the family dynamic, post this series, and see how they react with her actually being a superhero. So
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoyed how that dynamic shifted and grew and still being very supportive. A buddy of mine said the thing that he really connected with about Miss Marvel is he grew up in a big family, and his parents are awesome. I'm friends with his parents too.
mm,
And they are all really interconnected and things like that, and they have good communication and all of that. And he's like, I really loved the family dynamics in Miss Marvel because the parents weren't just idiots.
yeah,
Like they actually had a real relationship and they care, and they may not understand, but they try.
right,
And he's like, I've never really seen that before. And for him and his family, because they all watch these things together, that was one of the things they all really liked about that show.
right.
So I think it's really cool that it connects with people on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't shortchange any of the friend storylines or anything like that
Mm-mm.
either. Nakia has a running storyline in there where she's trying to become one of the like
Uh,
representatives in
yeah,
the mosque.
in the council, yeah.
Yeah. And so she's trying to help make some, more progressive changes in
Hmm.
there,
Hmm.
especially for the women of the mosque. And Bruno's got his own storyline going on. They're not just there to serve Kamala's story. They
Right.
have their own things going on. By and large, they do, but that's not their sole purpose. And I love that they each have their own little things going on as well. Um,
Yeah. Well, and there are some deleted scenes if you go and look in the extras on Disney Plus. There's
mm,
some really neat deleted scenes, and it kind of sheds some light on some things that I was kind of
Interesting.
curious about.
Okay.
Um, uh, in the episode where Amir and Faria are getting married, uh, Kamala goes to see Bruno, being taken away in an ambulance because the boy's hurt, and he's like, Kamala, like, I do this, I like you more than just a friend. I'm like,
Right.
oh, okay. So
Yeah.
there's definitely some of that going on in there. But they cut that from the main storyline, and there's never anything explicitly said after that. So I'm like, oh, that's an interesting choice. Like, how are they playing that? All of that. Uh, so yeah, I thought that was really interesting the
Yeah.
way that they were playing all that up. But knowing that and then knowing how, Bruno, puts it all on the line in the last episode where he walks in, he sees Kamala and Kamran kiss, and then damage control's coming. He's like, "Y'all go. I'll distract them." And I'm like, "Dude, you
Yeah.
like fall on your sword." Like he's head over heels with her. So I'm like, "Oh, bro. Oh,
Yeah,
that just breaks my heart."
but ultimately, he realizes, I think, in that moment, he realizes, look, she's obviously not in, like, it's so fast. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, you got to figure he's thinking about all this, like, and I mean, he's had time because, Kamran's been around for a little bit and, he can see the way she's looking at him.
Yeah.
Um, and so, he's had some time to reconcile with it and everything, but like ultimately he wants her to be happy and safe. And if that
Yeah.
means, and Bruno's just a good guy. Like
Yeah.
he's not that guy who's, the typical, oh, I've been friend zoned, like asshole dude. He ultimately, when it comes down to it, he's her friend. And
Right.
if that to be, even if he can't be with her in that way, he knows that they are still friends and they will still be in each other's lives.
Right.
And and who knows what time will tell.
Yeah.
But because the situation with Kamran, we haven't talked about him too much. Kamran is the son of Najima. He is a second generation of the clandestine. And he ends up getting powers very similar to um Kamala's, light based. His are a different color, but very
Hmm.
similar in terms of his powers. But he has less control over them
Right.
throughout the course of the last couple episodes. But he manages to escape and ends up in Karachi. Um, and I'm sure that won't be the last time we hear of him. I don't know what the status of a future Miss Marvel series will be. I'm hoping that we'll get a second season. But being that they're kind of pulling back on some
Mm.
stuff
Hmm.
um uh in that arena, I'm not positive. I would love to, since it's already an established series for the for Disney Plus. I would love to see them do at least one more season.
Yeah,
Just
I
to,
know I
yeah.
know Iman is definitely angling for
Oh
it.
yeah.
Also, like, I would not be surprised if in, several years down the line if we wouldn't see Iman Vellani just take over Marvel at Disney. Um,
Right.
and what a great person to hand the reins to. My goodness.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, I'm hoping that we get more. Yeah, I know that if you watch the Marvels, and you should,
yes,
that
you should.
one, we get a lot more of Kamala in that, and also by the end of that, we get some nice tantalizing teaser for more that she may be potentially in, even if she doesn't get her own show. Hopefully, we get more of her, regardless. And I know she will definitely be fighting for that. She's very outspoken, and very much a advocate for her own character, and just the future of the MCU. I think she would be a great choice in being one of the future leaders of the series of movies and stuff as a whole. Um, and just and because she'll take Feige to task. She's done it before.
Oh yeah.
She'll continue to do it. And, she has been very outspoken that the because they've mentioned it a few times that the movie and TV, the MCU, they've claimed that it's the 616, and she's like, no, no, no. The comic books are 616. This is a different universe. And so which she's not wrong. And so yeah, so it's really fun that she knows her stuff, and it's really fun to have somebody like her um in both arenas like that. Somebody who's crossing over into the comic books and keeping her toes in the acting world. And this was her like first major acting job too. Um, that it's insane just how good she is for something this major already. And I love that she's a talented person all around, and I'd love to see her in more stuff.
Yeah, would definitely agree. Uh,
But yeah, so
yeah.
I don't have anything more that I can think of to say. Is there anything we missed that you wanted to talk more about?
Yeah, I've got like just a couple of notes
Sure.
of things I'd like to touch on before we wrap, because I mean I could sit here and talk about Miss Marvel all day because I think she's so charming. I think the dialogue in this show is top notch. And she's really fun and really funny. Uh,
Right.
I love watching her daydreams because that's
Yeah.
what it looks like inside my brain. Like I was like, oh, I've got all these grand plans and these are the things I'm going to do, and then I explain all these things to my husband, and he's the Bruno, and he's like, so we're going to ride our bikes to the bus stop. like
Yeah.
like shut up, it was much
Yeah.
cooler in my head. And watching that kind of like final plan, the way they go and distract damage control,
Yeah.
that was really badass and really clever. I
Yeah.
really loved watching all of that to like work together. And you know the line, superheroes don't need babysitters, Amir.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care that mom sent you to look out for me. I'm a superhero. uh it was really really fun. But
No,
favorite
and that
go
that
ahead.
well, and to piggyback onto that, that it's nice to see too that one, all of her friends, like Zoe shows up and is very supportive. She's like, look, she saved me. And so I owe her,
Hmm.
and so and I think that's just part of it. Like, she just recognizes that that's, obviously Zoe, as much as she's this internet person who's like all about the clout and everything like that, she still seems to be a good person underneath it all.
Yeah.
And she's there to support her. And then the community. And it's an aspect that you
Yes.
see in the comic books as well, is that
Yes.
Jersey City itself in the comic books is very much behind Ms. Marvel. They very much as sure their area gets destroyed a lot. Um, they very much appreciate that there is a hero like her there to help, and so you see it in the last episode that they all crowd around her to protect her from damage control.
Yeah.
And they put themselves in the line of fire, literally. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you have the line, in the very first episode, it's not the brown girls from Jersey City that saved the world.
yeah,
And yet what does she do by the end of the episode?
yeah,
Here she is saving the day. Uh I also I wanted to mention really quickly, I really enjoyed the um kind of you were talking about like the community and the culture around that.
yeah,
Uh the aunties, which
yeah, yeah.
at first the Illuminantes, I was like, are all of these her actual aunties? But no, that's just
No,
that is a
yeah,
term of respect that you apply to an older woman in your circle, that she's your
yeah,
auntie. Uh, I have a buddy who is Indian, and that's very much his culture as well as uh all of the aunties and the uncles are, they are the people in your community that may or may not actually share DNA with you. So also the Illuminantes that are all in the stuff, I was like, wow, that's my mother and her sisters. Like they're all up in everybody's business like all the
yeah,
time. Like so many of their conversations, like, oh, ran off to travel Europe, and it's gonna be a problem when she doesn't have a ring on her finger. And I'm like, y'all need to calm down.
right,
But I definitely have heard my mother, my aunties having those kind of conversations. Like, y'all need to just cool it.
right.
So again, that was another thing I found relatable. Again, not being any of my culture, but still like there's some crossover there.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think that's what's fun about the
mhm,
show too, is that again, like even though they're different cultures and everything like that,
mhm.
it just goes to show how there are commonalities.
Oh, for sure.
And that, if you know anybody, and this is not like, look, white people culture, we don't have culture, all right? We don't have, like, by and large, and I'm not going to say we don't have it at all, but by and large, I would say we don't typically have um family slash um like neighborhood kind of structures that are like that,
Right.
where you have the aunties that are just groups of women who are all kind of connected through the neighborhoods and such like that. Don't
Mhm.
You do sometimes, depending on the neighborhoods and stuff like that, but you see that largely more in more ethnic um um uh cultures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was around a lot more Hispanic. I had Hispanic friends when I was younger, or even when I lived in Hawaii, more Asian friends. And you saw that more in their cultures where
Mhm.
they have bigger families.
Right.
And those families also are friends with other families, very close friends. And so like you would have these big gatherings, and so it's a different way of seeing it, and you do see it with white culture here and there, like I said, pockets of it, but it's not, by
Mhm.
and large, it's not part of our overall culture. And so being able to see that in um these shows and stuff like that, as long as you have had exposure to that kind of stuff, it's fun to see that and go, yeah, I know stuff like that. That's fun, and so
Yeah.
yeah, that definitely was a fun aspect of it.
Yeah. I think like the only other thing I would add to this conversation about Miss Marvel is I think you've got what Ashley Wehanko and I, when we were covering this on podcast 616 in this last episode, Kamala tells Kamran there is no such thing as normal. All we can do is make the best of the circumstances we've been given. Like
Yeah.
I I think that's almost like the Gen Z with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
Like uh but it's still like it's kind of an interesting companion line to the, with great power comes great responsibility. Uh reminding them like not one thing happens to every single, everybody's circumstances are different.
Yeah.
We just make the best with what we've been handed. And
Yeah.
I think that what valuable perspective to have with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And and I think that's a really good theme for the series as well, because you can kind of see that playing throughout.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's definitely, like you said, it's definitely an aspect of, it's if there is no normal. It's just reacting to the changes and rolling with it. And
Yeah.
um, and that, I mean, that's life in general, like you said. It's just that's if you have normal, great. More power to you. Don't get me wrong. Most of my days are what I would consider normal, you know,
Hmm.
but once in a while I get thrown a curveball. I got to roll with it. You got to figure out what to do. And, and that's how everybody should be. So,
Right.
but yeah, no, it's a great attitude to have with it. And a great, like you said, there's a great way to kind of turn that with great power comes great responsibility, kind of, gives Kamala her own kind of version of that
Hmm.
without it being exactly the same. So,
Yeah.
especially because, like I said, Kamala was created as a newer kind of character to take on that Peter Parker-esque um role in the comic books, because in the comics Peter Parker's now a 20 something adult. So
Right. Right.
but yeah, no, it's anything else?
I think that's it. If you've not watched Miss Marvel, give it a shot. It's got
Definitely.
really fun. And, like Rob and I have said, this is not our culture. And yet we both really found her story really relatable.
Hmm.
Um, Iman Vellani is stinking charming. Like I really love the line, like she said, what do you, Bruno said some things like, why would you think you have Ant-Man powers? It's like, we're both really charming and a lot younger than we look. or look a lot younger than we actually are.
Yeah.
It's like, can relate.
Yeah.
So but yeah, this is just a really, really fun series. It's worth sitting down, take a Saturday, take a Sunday afternoon, sit down, enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's worth a shot if you've not seen it at all.
Yeah. Most definitely. I agree.
And then
It's
go watch the Marvels afterwards.
absolutely. Yeah. You
Love the
watch.
Marvels so
Oh, me
much.
too. Yeah. What's your total count on it now?
Well, I saw it 8 times in the theater,
Right.
and I've
And
watched
about
it.
50 times since.
No, I've only gotten to watch it once since it's been on Disney Plus because
Uh,
Star Trek is back on the air. So,
oh, I got you.
right now I'm just living and breathing Star Trek. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, no, it's yeah, definitely the Marvels. Marvels is far and away one of my favorites of the more recent uh uh stuff that they've put out. So like the backlash on it just I don't understand it because it is such a fun movie. And all three of them together make such a great combo
Mm,
that they play so well off of each other.
yeah.
I couldn't even imagine how good they are at it, and they yet they pull it off very well. So,
Yeah. Great
and
chemistry, great action sequences.
yeah, definitely.
Um, Also, Laura Cartman, who did the score for Miss Marvel, did the score for The Marvels.
Mm.
And she's great. You get like a lot of different kinds of instrumentation. You get like a little bit of Miss Marvel flavor. You get uh, some photon or spectrum. Dr. Marvel, Professor Marvel. And then you get, of course, you have Captain Marvel as well. But it all of it was just the musical choices in that film are so so good. So both
Yeah,
score wise and soundtrack wise, top notch everywhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So, yeah. So, all right. Well, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
Sure. You can connect with me in a few different ways. Uh, if you want to connect with me on social media, you can hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, Mastodon, and Blue Sky. I am at the Nerdy Blogger at those various places. You can read my words on my blog, nerdyblogging.wordpress.com. You can read my um, words on fangirlish.com, where I write about film and television, mostly Star Trek, but I've also written about some Marvel stuff. In particular, I wrote about reasons why you should watch the Marvels. Like, yeah, so there is an article about that.
There you
If you need more reasons, I've got at least 7 for you there, and I'm sure if you message me, I'll give you a lot more than that.
go. All right.
Yeah. You can hear my words being read on the Sci-Fi 5 podcast, which is 5 minutes of science fiction history 5 days a week. The full archive of that is available at roddenberry.podcasts.com. And you can hear me, besides showing up on Creepy and Geeky occasionally, in 3 different places now. I'm on a 3rd podcast. It's pretty
Wow.
exciting. Uh, if you want to hear me talk more about Marvel and all things Marvel adjacent, you can hear me and Hugh McStay do that on Podcast 616, which is podcast 616. If you want to hear me talk about Star Trek, more specifically Star Trek Strange New Worlds and Star Trek Discovery, you can hear me on We Are Starfleet, where I talk about those shows and anything in the future of Trek and in the past of Trek, like TOS era and earlier. You can also hear me now on the Video Store podcast. It's a show. It's got a rotating round robin of hosts. So myself and 2 other guys right now, but we've got maybe a couple more coming in,
Mhm.
where we give you movie recommendations based around a theme or an actor or a director, and we recommend 4 movies for you, kind of in the style like what you would get at a video store. So
Yeah, cool.
I've got 2 episodes that are published at the time of recording. I've got a 3rd one in the bank, and getting ready to start on a 4th. So it's a great way to get movie recommendations, both older and a little more modern. So yeah, but it's a good time. It's been a fun project for me. Really enjoyed working on it.
That's awesome. Very cool.
I think those are all the places now. Whew.
I only have the one.
Hey, it's a lot less to remember. So
yeah, definitely.
I just need to set me up one of those as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely go check out all of her stuff. I've been on podcast 616 myself quite a few times now. So I like to think of myself as a regular there now.
Yeah, definitely one of our regular guests. Always happy to have you on.
Yeah.
Always makes for good conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again pretty soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Ashley for joining me. Next week, Alice Boyd Leslie returns to the show to talk about the Wes Craven movies New Nightmare and Scream. Thanks for listening. Creepy and Geeky is a part of the Morbidly Beautiful podcast network. Please check out morbidlybeautiful.com/podcasts for more great shows. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, please share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast is Gratitude, composed by Harper Smith. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the coffee page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.